This is the Sixth Man Show, an Orlando Magic podcast, with your hosts, Luke Sylvia and Jonathan Osborne, covering all things Magic basketball. By fans, for fans. Go Magic! What's going on, Orlando Magic fans? You guys are back with the Sixth Man Show. Today is May 9th, 2024. Jonathan Osborne here, as always, joined by my co-host, Luke Sylvia. Luke, what's up, man?
Not much, dude. I mean, we have a great conversation with JT in this one, but we won't bury the lead. The lead here is sometime in the off season. We don't have an official date or anything like that. Sometime in the off season will be my final episode here with the Six Man Show. Man. Yeah. So, if you're on audio, you're wondering what's happening, we'll cut to the chase. I'm freaking crying.
It's fine.
But yeah, I think it's important to note, like, anytime someone steps away from something, everybody's like, oh, like, what happened? Like, it must have been bad. There must have been a disagreement. There must have whatever, right? Something must have happened. Something's going on in their personal life. For me, it is just solely adulting. It is, I know myself. I know what I can handle. I know what my capacity is. And just time to step away. It's pretty much become hard to put, for me, 110% into my family, my job, and this.
I'm going to jump in right here. So Luke, obviously, he understands the level of commitment that he needs to give to his family, to his new career. Obviously, those of you that listen to the show probably know that Luke recently had a pretty significant change in his professional life, and the commitment that it takes to do what we do. Luke, came to me about a month ago with this, and I dropped to my knees in the middle of Walmart. Like, there's no other way. I wasn't in Walmart. I was in my bathroom, fully clothed. There was a joke put in a group chat a couple days ago. I was fully clothed when this happened. But my just like initial, I just threw my phone up in the air, like not in like an angry way, just like this completely sucks. It is devastating. It is obviously going to change the show in a major way. The show will never be the same, but I give, like, this dude is my brother. Like, he came out of nowhere, 4+ years ago when I desperately needed somebody. Like, the show never would have survived without Luke. And he realizes the amount of commitment to sort of all these like three pillars in his life right now, his family being the most important, followed by, the job and the role that he's in now for a ton of other reasons that we don't necessarily need to get into. I'll leave that up to you. But like, to Luke's credit, he knew that he couldn't continue to give myself and Kevin and the rest of our team and you all the level of commitment that we have, committed, that we've, the standard that we've set here to try to bring the very best show and the very best content that we can. So I'm heartbroken. Like, I'm not going to hide that at all. But at the same time, I'm proud of you. I get it. I can't hold anything against you. The show will never be the same. Kevin and I are still working through, what this is going to look like in the future, but there's no hard feelings. There's no negative feelings other than the fact that it just sucks. Like, that was always going to be the case if you or Kevin or any of the other guys ever, decided to step away. But I think this is what you need to do. I'm happy for you. I'm proud of you. But yeah, dude, it sucks. It is what it is.
Yeah, man. Unfortunately, just not able to. I know what all goes into this. I've lived it. So, just not able to give it. I'm not gonna ask the show to sacrifice for me. Like, that was never gonna happen. I was never gonna request that. So I appreciate you. Clearly I am still processing. So, yeah.
I mean, you picked the worst time, to be honest. Like, we just had this awesome, crazy fun playoff run, and me and Kevin are both like, "You're sure about this?
Yeah.
Like, you see what's going on? Like, you're sure about this?" But like, no, you and I, as this conversation started to, evolve, I knew pretty quickly that this was going to happen. Like, you changed jobs, and it was like a week later after you started, you're like, yeah, I'm 70%. I'm like, brother, I love you enough to tell you that it's been a week. You're at 70%. You're at 100%. Like, this is the way that it's going to go.
Yep.
And I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate you, being man enough to realize that, like, you weren't going to be able to do this to the full extent of what we've been doing, and not asking us to sort of scale this back because, we could have done that, to keep you a part of this. But to be honest, I didn't want to do that. And it sucks. And I know that's selfish of me. There's some selfishness going all around here to a certain extent. Yeah. But yeah, we're just going to do the best that we can to keep this party going. And let me also say this. Luke isn't like completely gone, right? Like, there will be a time that Luke is back to, say, hey, what's up? If I can't make it one week, Kevin or whoever can't make it one week, Luke jumps on to give, his two thoughts and to say what's up and all that kind of stuff. And, this isn't going to be completely official, I would say, at least for close to another couple of months. Luke is going to be around and is still going to be a part of our team, even when he's not necessarily in this day-to-day, week-to-week podcast role. So, like, nobody think that there's anything between myself and Luke. This is my brother. I love this guy. His role is just changing.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. But yeah. And I listen, this is the last thing I want to say, just because I'm not going to make it through whatever else. I might not even make it through this, but really just the simple fact is we got here based on consistency, volume, quality, all of the things that the show would have to sacrifice if I wanted to stay on board. Like I said, I didn't ask that because I know I don't want the show to take a hit from that at all. Like, there's no part of me that wants that, because I want to see the show continue to grow and just say that I played a part. So yeah, well, that's the last thing.
We'll get past
that's the last freaking thing until the last episode that I do here in a couple months. We can do this all over again, and you guys can turn up your car volume and say, what the heck is he saying? I can't understand him,
right?
Because he's freaking crying. But yeah, man, it has been incredible. Nothing short of that, and I'm thankful for it.
Yeah, and what I will say to that, you will always be a massive part of the show. Like, no matter how far this thing goes or how far we're able to take it, like, you will always be like, I cannot overstate. No matter what happens with the show, you will always be such a big part of getting us to wherever we end up here. So we wanted to do this now. We didn't want to just jump on an episode a couple months from now and say, hey, everybody, Luke is leaving. Because just like I have been processing this, and Luke has been processing this, and Kevin has been processing this, and our entire team has been processing this, I'm sure that there are some of you out there that are going to want to process this as well. And now for the next couple of months, we can just enjoy and cherish the time that, we still have left with Luke being in this role, pretty much full time. And like I said, I know there's going to be, probably a couple of times next season where it's like, hey, Luke, you want to jump on and talk Magic basketball with us, even if that looks like a full episode or 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever, like the door is always going to be open. You're always going to be welcome back. But we wanted to do this now instead of just throwing this on you, listeners and viewers a couple of months from now.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Jonathan, Kevin, whole team, and listeners, patrons, all of y'all make this happen. So
friends. All right, Luke. So before we get to the interview with Jeff Turner in a bit, now that we've, gotten a lot of emotions, we're just going to we're going to get out of the pool. We're going to get into the hot tub of emotions. Like, we're not going to move all that far. The last couple of days, as we're recording this Wednesday night, the season ended 3 days ago. And I have been not only, mourning this whole situation, but also the end of the season. I posted on Instagram today, just sort of like some images, from the beginning of the season, media day, basically up until, the last in-person show that we did this year. And just like finding myself being very sad. My caption was, every Magic season of my life has ended before I was ready, because obviously I want to see this team win the ultimate prize and lift that trophy. But this season is a little bit different. I just know that we're never going to have a season quite like this one, and not to start the waterworks again. But part of that is because, Luke isn't going to be a part of the show and the season in the way that he did this year. But I thought it would just be good and maybe like cathartic for us to talk about the season in its entirety. Just sort of starting with the expectations that we had going into the season, like going back to when we were tearing through the schedule when that was released last August, and mapping out what we thought the season was going to look like. And then all the fun, us being at Media Day, going into the preseason, the start of the season, obviously the big win at home over the Rockets. The team goes out west. They come back a few weeks later after that. We have the in-season tournament starting, and in the midst of that, we start the 9-game win streak. Then that comes to an end. Then you're looking at that, mid-December through the end of January gauntlet. We see Paolo make his first All-Star team. We watch him go through all of that. And then we just start ripping off wins after the All-Star break. It looks like we're going to finish as high as 2 in the Eastern Conference. Then you lose some games that you probably should win at the end of the season. We talked with Jeff Turner a little bit about that. You'll hear that later on in the episode here. But then you win the one that you need to at the end of the year to make sure that you're squarely in the playoff position. And then you have just a dogfight of a 7-game series against Cleveland. All the fun that we had at the home games at Kia. Game 5 was crazy. Win or go home. Game 6, you win that. You go up to Cleveland. You're up 18 in the first half. It looks like if we can keep this going for a few more minutes, the Magic are going to coast in this Game 7 of the second round. Cleveland comes back. The season ends. And here we are, Luke. What has this season been like for you, like just start to finish?
Well, I mean, first of all, you starting wise, start the season freaking 14-5. And I was like, whoa, we might have something. But at the same time, there's that little voice in the back of your head saying, it's all going to fall apart. And it didn't, right? Like the season turned from mountaintops and valleys to just like an ebbs and flows, right? Exactly where you want, how you want your season to be. There was never, you got through the tough parts of the schedule. You got through a little bit of the injury bug, all that kind of stuff. But that Charlotte win, so you beat Boston, you beat Denver, you make yourself 11-5. Make yourself at 11-5, and then you're looking at the schedule, looking at your chops, because you're like, oh, it's Charlotte, then Washington. And can we take care of business against the bad teams too? We just beat a couple Giants, right? At home. You beat Charlotte. Cole Anthony's 30 points. You beat Washington. You get 31 points from Franz, I believe, in both of those. Unless that's Mo Wagner that I see in that second one. It's not. It's Franz.
They're both Franz.
Yeah. So you get the Franz back-to-back 30 pieces after having a Cole Anthony 30 piece. You're taking care of business. Yeah, and then all of a sudden you're 14-5, right? Then you get to the point in the season where the losses are catching up a little bit, right? You find yourself 24-23 at one point there, and that you lose to Dallas at Dallas. That was a heartbreaker. I do distinctly remember that one against Dallas. Paolo has 36, and then you fall to 24-23, and then this team kind of kicks it in gear, and all of a sudden they just turn on the burners. Right, March 13th, you're 38-28 all of a sudden. And this team just proved time and time again that even though we're down, definitely doesn't mean we're out. And that they're just going to continue to apply pressure. And that's what they did. Times got tough, and they just turned on the burners. And then to win 47 games. Like, sometimes I just think about it, and I'm like, the Milwaukee game happened, basically do or die if you didn't want to make the play-in and you wanted to get out of that situation. You win, you get 47 wins, but we're so caught up in the fact that we're not in the play-in anymore that I think we might have forgotten to celebrate a little bit the fact that this team went 47-35. And rightfully so. I mean, we just evaded disaster there down the stretch by not going to the play-in. But just the fact, like, I don't even know the average age of this team, probably like 24. And to get that many wins. And then you're at the point where you could become the second youngest team ever to come back down from a 2-0 deficit. You go into that game 7, up 18, and you feel like that's going to happen. This team gave us a lot to believe in. They gave us a lot of hope. And I said this to you guys yesterday. Is it October already? Well, you can just skip. You guys can just skip to there. Tell me who we signed, who we didn't re-sign, and let's roll the ball out, because this team has a lot of momentum, and that's everything in this league is momentum, and using this, going all the way to Game 7 to use that momentum to do even more next year.
In recent years, when we get to this point, and I'm not going to lie, even to a certain extent this year, like the series ends, and although I'm upset and would much rather be in the middle of watching a Magic Celtics series, there, like, for us, there's like we can sort of take a breath, right? Like there's this sprint all the way through the season and at the end of the year. And I guess we probably should have mentioned this. This is going to be our last episode for about a week and a half. So today, this episode is coming out May 9th. Our next episode won't come out until May 20th. So we're going to take about the next 10 days off. We feel that we have earned that to a certain extent. And we just need to take a quick breather before we sprint through the rest of this off season here. But we're 4 days now removed from the season, and I am ready for next season to start. Like, that's how excited I am about the way that this team ended the year. Obviously, I want to see free agency and what happens, and are we able to get, Malik Monk? Do we blow everything up and we trade for Trae Young, or are we able to sign Paul George? Do we pay Klay Thompson $50 million a year? Like, whatever is going to happen is going to happen. But I already want to see how this team is going to take those experiences from that series against Cleveland. And now that they have the hindsight to look back at some of these games that you really should have had and should have won, looking at that Mexico City game against Atlanta, looking at some of the Miami losses where they weren't fully healthy, and one of those games they were playing with like 8 guys that you should have won. That loss in in Memphis towards the end of January, right? We talked about that loss to Charlotte towards the end of the year, the loss at Houston, the loss at Milwaukee when they didn't have Giannis or Chris Middleton. Like there are games like that sprinkled throughout the season. The double overtime loss to Sacramento, even though that was an incredible performance, 43 points from Paolo Banchero, guys hitting threes all over the place. It would have been nice to have that one, right? Just some of those games where you look back, and we talked about really in each instance at the end of that game, we said, this is probably going to be one of those games where at the end of the year, you look back and said, okay, well, this would have been different had we ended up winning those games. So even though there's probably 6 or 7 of those games throughout the year that we could really pinpoint and say, hey, you should have won this game. The fact that you end up with 47 wins, you're out of the play-in, you're the 5 seed, you take Cleveland to the brink, right? And I think if you're a little bit healthier, right, like Gary Harris, if he's fully healthy, Jonathan Isaac didn't totally look right towards the end of this series. Jalen Suggs obviously was basically banged up since November. Maybe if you're a little bit healthier, maybe this series goes a different way. You could also say the same for Cleveland. If they're fully healthy, maybe this doesn't get to 7 games, right? But this team is going to look back at this season, and I'm sure they are now, but that's what I'm looking forward to come October, like how this team comes out of the gate motivated with a new sort of understanding that every regular season game counts. Like if this team had the chance to go back to that Charlotte game on April 5th on the road, they blow the doors off of Charlotte. I'm fully convinced of that. And then you have home court advantage, and I'm fully convinced that this series against Cleveland really just came down to who had home court advantage. I really think if games 1, 2, 5, and 7 were in Orlando, we are facing off against Boston right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's tough to swallow, but it's the case, and like we'll talk about this in the upcoming conversation with Jeff, but a lot of the exit interviews talked about that, about how important home court is, how important that random day in January for that game is. And when you are as good as the Magic were at home this year, I mean, it doesn't shock any of us that, yes, it shocks us how much we won by, but it doesn't shock any of us that we played so much better at home than on the road. You finished the season 29-12 at home, whereas you were 18-23 on the road. So that does stink, not having home court. You were one result away, but I'm also telling myself, so was Cleveland. Right? Like we can play that game, and I'm sure Cleveland dropped some games I wish they could have back. But this team now knows. And coming into next season, I really do think that they're going to come out with their hair on fire. I hope they don't go too fast doing that and committing so hard to the regular season that they just are exhausted and come up way shorter than what they could do, what potential says they could do in the playoffs next year. But it is crazy to think that we are this soon into this rebuild, and it's not a rebuild anymore.
What was your biggest takeaway from the exit interviews?
I think I did place a lot of that emphasis on home court advantage, but also Jeff Weltman. I thought the discourse was super interesting, and you put out kind of a tweet about your thoughts in regard to Jeff mentioning or saying, when it comes to, we need to, yes, we need to improve in the shooting, but I do think that a lot of it could come within the organization. But then he goes on to talk about all the different ways you can add shooting, right? And it's like Jeff gave the safe answer, which is on brand, and what do you want him to say? And to your point, to your credit of what you said was, what do you want him to say? Yeah, these guys that we have suck at shooting, and we need to bring in some new guys, because that'll go over well if you don't get those new guys and you're stuck with the crappy shooters again. because then they're just not going to play for your organization. So Jeff is very strategic. We know this. That's why he plays so close to the vest. But I thought that quote was interesting just because that's what stuck out to me, because that's what stuck out to everybody. And everyone's going to have their own opinion about it. But yeah, like what do you want him to say? Is it my worst nightmare that we don't add a single shooter or point guard that can remotely shoot this offseason? Absolutely. That is my worst nightmare this offseason. I don't expect anything big because nothing tells me that Jeff and Anthony Parker are going to go put their chips all in. There's nothing that tells me that. Until it happens, I won't believe it. And eventually it will happen. But right now, it's so soon. You exceeded expectation. You bought yourself a lot of time if you're this front office to like just do your thing. It's not like they came up short. It's not like they made the play-in, barely made it, and got swept. Right? It's not like they made the play-in and then didn't make it to the playoffs. They bought themselves time. They did an incredible job. And this team played their butts off in the postseason, go to 7, and all of a sudden Jeff and AP are looking around like, hey, we could take our sweet time with this. These guys are good. Our floor is the playoffs. We know that now. So now we can just kind of tinker. We can add a shooter here and there. We can, look towards next offseason to maybe take a big swing. But who knows? Maybe this team is a second round team next year. And then all of a sudden, then you're ready to take your huge swing for contending for the Eastern Conference Finals or the Finals.
So to your point, I'll just read a little bit of the tweet that I sent out, that part of Jeff's job is to maintain as much leverage as possible in every negotiation, whether that be trade or free agency, while also maintaining the morale of the current roster, because guys are here until they're not, right? Like we talk about replacing Markelle and replacing Gary and some of these other guys. But if free agency just breaks in a way that Markelle and Gary Harris end up back here, like first of all, Gary had a rough couple of months shooting the ball, but overall still was pretty solid from behind the arc this year. Now, Markelle, you don't want to come out and say like, oh, we definitely need a better starting guard and we need to get some guards in here that can shoot and yada, yada. You can't do that. And to Jeff's credit, like regardless of what is happening, he is not going to give an inch in terms of leverage in negotiations, whether that be trading with another team or signing a free agent. If he comes out and says, oh my gosh, we desperately need shooting. Well, then if you're in conversations with a guy, like Klay Thompson, he's going to say, well, I know you need shooting and this is my price. And he has the leverage in that situation because he knows that he has something that you need and you probably need him more than he needs you. And then when it comes to trades, if another front office knows that, hey, you desperately need to add shooting and we know that you want to add shooting, they're then able to hold that over your head. So that's why I wanted to sort of lay that out. And I said, I've learned to focus less on what this front office says and more on what they actually do. The latter just requires more patience. So yes, you have to wait longer to see what they do play out, but they can talk all day long. Ultimately, it doesn't mean anything. We will know what they think when we see the moves that they make. So that was really my biggest takeaway from the exit interviews, apart from literally every single person mentioning how big home court advantage was. Right. So that's going to be an emphasis going in next season and them taking the regular season, seriously. But beyond that, it was Jeff, talking about how this team can improve. And hey, if that internal growth, I will buy that if you're telling me that we're going to see Jett Howard next summer or next season, right. Rather. For a guy that you took with the 11th pick, you cannot just flat out not play him for the first couple of years of his season or of his career. Because at that point, it's like, well, then why did you take him with the 11th pick? We've seen plenty of other guys that were taken after Jett Howard that have been able to contribute in a real way, for the teams that they were selected by. So to me, it would be unacceptable if Jett Howard is not in the rotation next season. So if you're telling me that we're going to see internal growth from guys like Jalen Suggs, which Jalen Suggs shot pretty close to 40% this year from three. in terms of like spacing the floor, I don't know how much more growth you're going to see from Jalen Suggs. But if you're telling me, Paolo Banchero, Cole Anthony, Franz Wagner, Anthony Black, is Caleb Houston going to be a legitimate rotation guy next year? Are we going to see Jet Howard? If you're telling me that, then sure, I will buy that. But if we just bring everybody back and say, hey, we're going to count on, internal growth in this department, I do think you're not going to take all of the $32 million that the Magic have in projected cap space. You're not going out and signing Paul George and having him eat up all of that. I just don't see that happening. But are you looking to bolster the center position with a signing? Are you looking to make a move for a guy potentially like a Malik Monk or a D'Angelo Russell, something like that? I think we're probably going to see multiple moves being made with that $32 million. The Magic also could decline the second year in Joe Ingles, contract and open up about $11 million more in cap space. And maybe you re-sign him at a lower number. I really don't know. They do have some potential to get a little bit creative with the cap space. But to me, you've got to bring in shooting. And the shooting that you have, you either need to see it and add it in Jet Howard, or not even you either need to. You need to see Jet Howard in the rotation next year, and guys like Paolo and Franz and Cole, like those guys need to take another leap in terms of shooting efficiency.
A side note here with Joe Ingles, after that playoff series, I'm cool with letting him walk. It was bad. It was like unplayable. And it was unfortunate, and it was sad, to be quite honest, because Joe was such a stabling force for us when it came to like the pick and roll with Mo, and we affectionately got to calling them Mojo. I would miss that. I would miss Joe Ingles for all that he is. I think he is incredible as a human, trash talker. In the pick and roll, he is good during the regular season against bench players. But when you're playing against starters, because they're playing their starters 40 plus minutes in a game, you're going up against starters, and Joe Ingles just is not a starter in this league anymore.
But at what point do we say, like, hey, we don't need veterans anymore? We're just going to let the young guys, the inmates, run the asylum. I do still think, and I'm a massive proponent, like Joe, a few months ago or a few weeks ago, maybe talked about like, hey, if they don't want me here, I'll be playing for Osceola next year. Like, he wants to stay in Orlando. So if they were able to say like, hey, we're gonna decline this player option for next year, we'd love to re-sign you at $6 or $7 million, I would be all for bringing Joe Ingles back, understanding that most likely you're not going to be able to play him in a playoff series. But if he's there to be able to bring AB and Jet along maybe a little bit slowly in that second unit, I don't know. Well, I do know. I wouldn't hate that. I wouldn't be against that. I would go so far to say that I hope they do that. Because if Gary's not going to be here and Markel's not going to be here, you do need some more, veteran voices still in that locker room.
Yeah, I mean, in come regular season, he's pretty great. Like, gives you spot minutes, and he played like 16, 17 minutes a game this year or something like that during the regular season. I think he's great in the regular season. I think he's a fine regular season player. I think he brings a lot of stability. The other thing really quickly I wanted to touch on, Jonathan, is really just Magic related news that we didn't hit on at the top, obviously, for obvious reasons. Jalen Suggs, Defensive Player of the Year vote, third place, I believe is what it was, correct?
So did Domantas Sabonis, though. So, like, how much does that really count, You
know what? I was trying to focus on the positive
Domantas Sabonis got a fifth place vote for MVP. Like, whoever it is, like, I respect the grind, but let's be for real.
Yeah, it is unfortunate, but regardless, we're in the new stages of being relevant again. So seeing Jalen Suggs' name at all was great, and now we just kind of sit and wait for those defensive teams to be announced, because that's what we're really waiting for.
Yeah, if he's not, I think he should be first team, but if he's not, on either of those teams, then I'll be rioting on social media. I'll be going through to see who filled out what ballot. There will be a lot of direct ats on Twitter if he's not, on one of those. So, but yeah, congratulations to Jalen Suggs. MVP voting was announced tonight. Unfortunately, it was not Mo Wagner. It was Nikola Jokic. Mo Wagner was robbed in the eyes of many for the league MVP. But I guess congratulations to Jokic.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, Luke. I mean, I we've said this a few times. I feel like I've been saying this on social media at nauseum, but I hope and I know that Magic fans understand just how special this season was. I have caught some flack for saying like we exceeded expectations. Nobody thought that we were going to be here. Like at the beginning of the year, we said like you and Kevin said 42 wins. I said 43 wins, and like we would make the play-in, right? Nobody thought with like a week to go or a week and a half to go in the regular season that we would have a legitimate chance at the 2 seed. And then with the way that games 1 and 2 went, I don't know that anybody expected us to still take this series to 7. I expected the Magic to play better and the role players to pick it up in the home games. And like, maybe you get 1 or 2 there and this series ends up going 5 or 6. And I think most of us would have been, disappointed with that. But overall, I think we still would have had a pretty good outlook. But to take this to 7 games, to have the 18-point lead in the first half, looking like you were primed to blow that game open and go on to the second round, which nobody would have thought that we would beat Boston, but I would have liked our chances to steal a game or even 2 and make the rest of those games pretty competitive the way that we've played Boston the last couple of years and the way that we match up with them. But basketball aside, just the personalities that we got to see like really come to life this year, like obviously Jalen Suggs and his interactions with the fans at Kia, but we also got to see like pieces of Paolo's personality that we hadn't seen before. Like we got to see the kid become an all-star for the first time. Obviously, the game winner after the all-star break in Detroit, where he just so clearly didn't have it and was super sick for most of that game, hits the game winner. The amount of emotion that you saw him display after that game. We know that Cole Anthony had been dealing with off the court issues for the better part of at least the second half of the season, and for him to have his moment at the end of Game 6. Franz, we've known that he's a competitive guy and a fiery guy, but to see, him hyping up the crowd, during these home playoff games. And obviously everybody knows, about Mo Wagner and Joe Ingles and the way that he trash talked teams all year long. Even Anthony Black and the opportunities that he was given, hitting threes and staring down the opponent's team, their bench. Seeing Jonathan Isaac come back, and I think, what was it, like a total of 65 games or something like that this year at a JI. This was just such an awesome season. Yeah, it was 65 games for Jonathan Isaac. If you would have told us that we were going to get 58 regular season games from JI and 7 games of the postseason, we would have been standing on our heads in excitement. And he seems back. He looks better than ever. He looks healthy. Markel, obviously we were super excited for him after the way that he looked last year. It seems like he was dealing with like a knee fracture for a big part of the season. It seems like it was a small knee fracture, but he released a video on his YouTube channel, I think earlier this week, where, some kind of trainer was talking that, he's had some sort of fracture in that knee. So he didn't really look right at any point during this season, but just so many stories throughout the roster and the way that these guys like genuinely liked each other and loved one another, and how they've any opportunity they've been given this year to repeat that again and again. And it starts with Jamal Mosley and the culture that he has set in place, but it truly permeates through the entire organization. And my biggest thing is I just hope, and I know that Magic fans are really going to appreciate this season, and I'm always going to look back on this season fondly. And eventually when like the championship documentary comes out, and we can look back at this season sort of being the real first step forward towards that, and guys are talking about like the early years and how fun this team was. Like I'm going to have, that one little, tear just falling from my eye, like looking back on this team. And I'm going to tell my kids about this, one day. Like my kids, they know that, we love the Magic. They are all about the song, right? Like they know that if we're in the car and my oldest will say, Dad, I'll say, what, Avery? And she'll say, play the song. Like we play the song and we turn it all the way up. So I know one day I'm going to be telling my kids and maybe even my grandkids about this 2023-2024 team and just this entire season. And it's been awesome. And as excited as I am for next season, I'm still sad that this season is over.
Beautifully said. Yeah, sometimes it's said so beautifully, you don't even need to add anything. All right. I think it was great.
Fair enough. Let's talk a little bit about our patrons. They are the folks that have supported us not only throughout this season, but the last few seasons. Help it. They make it possible. Everything that we do here, we could not do without them. We give a very special shout out to our Hall of Fame and Elite Tier patrons each and every episode. We'll go ahead, as always, start with the Court Cousins, Drew Gooden, Armin, Carson Tulo, Ellis, Jonathan Borges, Normal Magic Player History, Gabe Gaines, Wiffle, Michael Martin, Jamel Miller, Michael Salapong, Donkey Punch, Dave, Paolo and Francis Warmth, Pierre A., Dylan Holden, Mr. Mikey, Danimal, Bobby Skinner, Goody93, Teddy Sylvia, I don't want to see you in the cancellation list in the next couple of months here when Luke is not here. You are a six-man show Patreon lifer, I hope. And this is the perfect opportunity for Mr. Ron Sylvia to join the Patreon as well. Now that Luke is leaving, there would be nothing funnier. Dalek Lopez, Fuchsia, Bill Fulton, Edmund Lagone, Jose Esquilin, Caleb Pete, Cam Newsom, Time, Mr. TV, ESPN Really Sucks, Gear 95, Shren, Junior Bruce, Halfreakin, Shahan 177, Bobby the Don, Himlo Ben Himro, Arm Prof 221, Ray Pastrana, Magic Kid 714, Mysterious Mosley, Victor Cologne, Irish Magic Mike, Austin Lampy, Random Hustle, Only Franz Maria, Keith Walsh, Fritz Currency Kev, or Fritz, Brub Sal, Cason Green, Santi Leon, Kane Eckler, The Distracted, Mod Simpson, Chansu, Tom Gatson, Dead Air, Richard Tuttle, Jeremiah Quintero, Magic Wire, Debo 1980, Magic Matt, Michael Thompson, Mama Richmond, Next Snap at What's Up Playoffs 2024, Dylan Fay, Sammy, David Duffy, Smith Sheiks, Bueno Time, Stantino 1995, Suggs Muggs, Derek Smith, Jay Rodrigo. A big shout out to all of our patrons. You can find us at patreon.com/The Six Man Show. The last few weeks, we have not been doing a jam of the week just because the irregularity of the postseason schedule. But we do want to do a jam hot chicken jam of the series, folks. I'm going to take you back to better times, to better vibes. We're going to go back to Game 3 in Orlando at the Kia Center. With 4 minutes, 17 seconds to go, Marcus Morris passes or tries to pass the ball to Max Strus. Jalen Suggs steps in the passing lane. The Magic are up 22 at this point, 58-90. Jalen Suggs starts the fast break, and you can just hear the Kia Center begin to erupt with anticipation. You don't know what Jalen Suggs is going to do. Is he just going to lay it in? Is he going to throw down a nice little two-hander? Jalen Suggs takes off from just outside the restricted center and with the right hand hits the one-handed windmill. I almost could not believe he was hitting the windmill at this point in the game. But let's be real, folks. The game was over at this point. Jalen Suggs dunks it home to give the Magic a 24-point lead, 92-58, 4:07 to go in the third quarter. Kia Center erupts. It was a party from that point forward, and that was the Jam Hot Chicken jam of the series.
Shout out to Jay Sizz, Jalen Suggs for that one-handed windmill. And like we said, that was your Jam Hot Chicken jam of the series. Jam Hot Chicken, LA and Nashville inspired hot chicken shack, locally owned and operated in beautiful Winter Park, 400 West New England Avenue. It's Suite 13 there in Hannibal Square. Go check them out. They have that hot chicken. They've got the cookies now as well.
Shout out to Fat Ash Bakes, which I have had. The strawberry lemonade, S-tier cookie.
Yeah, well, there you go. Go to Jam Hot Chicken. Check out what cookies they've got that day, and get yourself one. And when you're there, let them know that you heard about them through the Six Man Show.
I am going to make a trip at some point during the off season just to go to Orlando, just to go to Jam Hot Chicken, because I know I cannot go 5.5 months without Jam Hot Chicken. So that's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, now, without further ado, let's get into our conversation with our good friend, Jeff Turner. And now, Magic fans, we are joined by a very special guest. Not the quarter season of the mark, but now we're here at the very end of the season. But as we've been checking in all season long with Magic legend and color commentator for Valley Sports Florida, Jeff Turner. JT, how are you doing now that the season has come to an end? Thanks for joining the show.
I am doing great. Always glad to be with you guys. Just kind of a wild 7-game series to close out the year, and a lot of traveling back and forth. I had done enough of Cleveland. I think I had ate everywhere you possibly could around that hotel, so I was ready to come home or go to Boston. Just didn't work out, but. It's disappointing, obviously, to finish, but the upside for this team is great. So it's I think that Magic fans should be thrilled about the possibilities of the future.
Jeff, if you could sort of just like briefly recap the series for us, give us your thoughts on how it played out, and specifically the performances of Paolo, Franz, and Jalen Suggs.
Yeah, I think it's interesting just the way the series flows, and then kind of the way people look at it. The reporting around the series. You go into Cleveland those first 2 games, and there's obviously it's the first time for our young team, for most of them, playing in a playoff setting. Didn't shoot it well. And, I think the narrative was kind of like the series is over. A lot of people felt like it would be quick. But I really, like all of us around the team, as you follow the team all year, and knowing how good this team was at home, 29 wins there in the regular season, just kind of felt like at that 3rd game, you get that one and you could change things. And we did, and obviously played well in game 4. 5, kind of was one of those that, right there at the end, just kind of a couple of bad decisions late. I felt like in that one, kind of got away with, maybe ran out of gas a little bit. And then game 6, just, really something to watch this young team in a closeout, right? It's a closeout game. You have to win or go home. Their first experience at that. And, I represented themselves very well to force a game 7. And then, I don't even know how to talk about game 7, to be honest with you. We were so good. I was there doing radio with Jake Chapman. The building was loud. We came out just knocking down threes in that first quarter, cruising along up 18, and the crowd was pretty silent. And, they just got a couple of threes to go down. Sam Merrill came in and knocked down a couple of shots. And, even though they cut it to 10 at the half, I really, I felt good. But, it's just one of those things where I thought we got good looks from our best players, especially Franz and Jalen. And they just didn't have enough. It's just one of those nights where you needed one of them, right? Just one of them to be on to help Paolo, and it just wasn't there for him. And I felt really so bad for both of those guys, because they were really down after the game, which you would expect, right? Like they're just such ultra competitors and really down. But, kind of looking ahead at what we saw, Obviously Jalen and Franz had a great series other than maybe that last game, but let's talk about Paolo. My goodness. It seemed like every game we're talking about, the youngest players since, to have a, 30-point, 10 rebound, whatever it is game. He really stepped up on a big stage and showed you why he's going to be an all-star in this league for a lot of years to come. Just such an ultra talented kid. And I say kid because, I have said this on some other interviews, is, that we all have to remember that most players don't reach their prime, right? Like when they're really at their best, like when I played, because guys came in at, 21, 22 years old, it was usually in that 28, 27 to 29 range. That's kind of when it all starts really clicking and you're at your peak, your body is matured. Paolo's 21 years old. In today's game, maybe that number comes down to 25 to 27. So I think as we have to remember that, and we have to look ahead and kind of, as we think about this team and think about their age, like we have to kind of look long range and think, gosh, what are Paolo and Franz and Jalen Suggs going to be like? What kind of players are they going to be when they're 23, 24, 25 years old? And that, I think, it should excite you, I think, if you're a Magic fan.
What was your main takeaway, both positive and like a critique of this Magic team that pushes Cleveland to 7? If you had to kind of sum it up in like one thing that you were super impressed by and one thing that, you maybe thought that they didn't maybe capitalize on or do too well.
Well, I think, I think the thing that, I think, and it's all season, Luke, that has impressed me, and it's like, it is so hard to play with the defensive intensity and defensive effort that this team plays with, and to carry it over into the playoffs. Holding Cleveland, to under 100 points in 5 of the 7 games. Just that, keeping them in games, I think, probably is, my biggest positive. But, like if we're going to say a critique, I think really for a young team, and we've, you probably talked about this before, but I think the playoffs really begin to highlight and really, you really see that each possession, right, is so valuable. And so the turnovers, the missed opportunities, things like that, I think, those have to get better, obviously. The shooting, we all know we've got to score more points, right? That's really the bottom line of the game. But that was an issue all season long. We went into the playoffs with the lowest, I think, offensive efficiency rating in the league. Right around 112 points per 100 possessions. So, those things have to get better. But if I'm going to have a critique, I guess for those young guys is really, and it's not their fault necessarily, but really valuing the basketball in every possession. I think that's hopefully that's one of going to be their biggest takeaways, and probably I would say really understanding how important home court advantage is, right? And so like the regular season matters, and you can't let games get away from you that you should get. Maybe those things, I guess, Luke. And it's hard to criticize this team just because they play so hard. I thought the coaching was tremendous. I thought Jamal Mosley made some great adjustments throughout the series, and just keeping those guys in it when they could have let go of the rope. There were a lot of times that could have happened, and they just kept battling, get down and fight their way back and have a chance. But again, it's just that game 5, right? It was just, we had a couple of possessions that were empty. We took some bad shots, and it just got away from us in a 1-point game.
Jeff, I think it's impossible to talk about, the disappointment of the loss without also stating how excited we still are for the future of this team. And you mentioned the importance of home court advantage. That was a big talking point really for everybody during the exit interviews. When you look back to that Charlotte loss late in the season, or to Houston or Milwaukee, the last couple of weeks of the season, you had not only a chance to put a stranglehold on home court advantage, but also the 2 seed in the East. These guys talking about home court advantage, and now they understand that a game on Wednesday in the middle of January and the importance that carries for the future of this team. what do you think like their approach is going to be at the start of the regular season next year, and how they'll sort of take these lessons that they learned in the postseason with them?
Yeah, I think it's a great motivator. It really is. I remember I remember being in the NBA Finals against Houston Rockets, and we lost. Got swept in the series, lost Game 4 on their court, and the confetti is dropping and everything. And Brian Hill wouldn't let us leave the court. He brought us all in, and he knew we were hurting. We just wanted to get out of there, right? Just get off the court. But he brought us all in, and he said, I want you to remember this, right? This is what we're playing for. This has to motivate you going into the off season. And I really believe it did. I mean, if you go back and you look, the following year, that Magic team won 60 games, and playing really well. Obviously, we lost in the Eastern Conference Finals that next year to the Bulls, but there was a great motivation to get back, to have another chance. And I think the positive in this, I don't know. I think if you'd lost in 4, if you'd lost in 5, it still would have stung, and there would have been that motivation. But they really got a taste, right? A true taste of the playoffs, of a Game 7, and that feeling, and that the intensity of both the Magic crowd and the Cleveland crowd. And I think that's something that, as a player, if that doesn't motivate you in the offseason, then you probably don't have the competitive spirit to take you any further anyway. So I think as much as it hurt, that hurt can be turned into a lot of good work and improvement. So it'll be interesting to see coming back, what they're saying when we all meet again in training camp.
This team far exceeded expectation. I want to do a callback real quick, Jeff, to when you were on the pod last. I asked you, who do you want in the playoffs? You said, I want the Miami Heat. I want a rivalry. I want to spark that. And then we went on to see the Heat lose in 5, and that was beautiful to watch as well, and us go take Cleveland distance. But would you say after this series, you saw the kind of chippiness a little bit here and there in that Cleveland series? Would you say that there's a potential for a rivalry with them being such a young team moving forward, that if you keep stacking playoff rounds against each other, this could be a future rivalry for the Magic?
Yeah, I don't see why. Those rivalries come from, playing against each other. That's the thing, is like the chippiness comes from, it's the same guys, right? Every night, each other. You just didn't know. By the time you get to Game 7, there's no adjustments or strategy. It's the same guys. It's sort of like training camp, right? Like training camp gets chippy sometimes because you're playing against your teammates every day, and you just want to play against someone else. So there's a little something there now, right? And maybe Cleveland's not going to go away. As long as they continue to keep their pieces together and let it kind of grow organically. There's, as you pointed out, they're still a very young team. So yeah, I think that could be somewhat of a rivalry. I think it's funny. The whole Miami thing. I didn't realize the reach that you guys have and everything till I don't remember which game it was. I decided to walk out of the building through the bottom and cross the street going after a home game. And there's a bunch of people out there, and all of a sudden these guys start yelling at me, Jeff Turner, JT, Jeff Turner. They did, and I turned around and they said, we don't want Miami, Jeff, So I was like, wow, 6-man podcast listeners, I guess. But, that's a lot of people were talking about that and everything. And so I wouldn't be surprised if, come next year, you start thinking about you getting down to the playoffs and you're watching the standings. as Magic fans, would you like another shot at Cleveland? Would you like to, go in there and beat them? And so I think that's something that could build. Absolutely.
I got to be honest. I'm hoping that we see the improvement with this team, that there isn't a team that we don't want to see next year. Like we get to that point, throw anybody at us. Beating Miami in a
Even
playoff
Miami?
series would be one of the most crowning achievements of my life, just being able to witness that. Jeff, for me, and I know for some other, Magic fans, is awesome of a season as this was and how much fun it was, there's a real element of sadness, now that it's over, particularly due to the fact that, each year teams shuffle at least a little bit. It most likely won't be the same 15 guys, that it was this season. And everybody throughout the organization, anybody that you've asked or talked to have talked about just how special this group was. You being around the team and so close to the team, would you just be able to speak to that a little bit? And if it really is special, considering, you've been around a lot of different teams.
Yeah, I think it is. It's almost, it really is different than what you normally see. It's college like, right? It's like, it's a group of guys, it's a business, right? And it's guys wanting time on the floor. You wouldn't be in the NBA if you didn't think you belonged in the lineup playing, right? That's not how you get there. You're one of those, A personalities that's supposed to be on the floor. And with that, there's a lot of jealousy sometimes on a lot of teams and things, but you don't see any of that with the Magic. And I think that starts obviously with Jamal Mosley and his coaching staff. They've got those guys to buy in to the, that we're a family kind of thing. And it's the way he treats them with respect. And they return that the same way. It won't be the same, but it wasn't the same this year. It was the previous year. There's always little tweaks to the lineup. But I think what you hope is that you're developing something that as people come in, to the organization, it's something that is part of it, right? Like I don't even want to say culture because, I don't want to go down that road, because that, just, it sounds like that team in the South, too much. So, but right, like there is something to when you come to the Magic, this is what it is, right? This is, like we cheer for one another, we pull for each other, whether you're getting time or not. And I think that to me is why, I think that's why this, fans have fallen in love with this team is because I hear it. It's like, I love the way they cheer for one another. You can't keep them on the bench, right? They're all up all the time. And there's something special about that, that there's a caring in there and you can see it, especially when you're traveling with them.
Obviously, Jeff, one of the biggest areas of improvement for this team is going to be shooting. We know that would just unlock so much for the offense and for guys like Paolo and Franz. Apart from that, what do you think is the biggest area that the Magic can improve on heading into next season?
Yeah, I'd love to see, and this may happen organically, right? With the young roster, we don't know what the future holds for a lot of different guys. But, I'd love to, obviously the shooting, I know Jeff Weltman, is a believer that, we've got young guys that need to just kind of grow into being shooters. And I don't think that's a reach. I mean, you drafted Jet Howard, you drafted Caleb Houston, to be shooters. They're both 21 and under. The one thing that I would love to see is another playmaker, right? Like another, facilitator, someone to, a starter, whether that's a true point guard, I don't know, a scoring point guard, but someone that plays alongside Franz and Paolo, and so they don't always have to be the initiators. they're very capable and don't, but sometimes I would like to see them, get Franz back to cutting off the ball and having somebody find him, getting Paolo the ball in his spots a little bit more. That would be, something that, if I was looking at this team that I would think, okay, that's something we could do. But, again, maybe Anthony Black develops into that, right? Like he's young. I mean, he's got a whole summer, another year. Maybe he's that guy. I don't know, but we just need somebody out there along those guys that can get in the lane, make a play for somebody.
A couple more here, Jeff, before we let you go. You've been at hundreds of Magic games at this point. Obviously, everybody talks about the old building and how loud that got. Could you just talk a little bit about the crowds this year at Kia Center, especially in those playoff games? Have you heard that building that loud as we saw it this postseason?
Yeah, I have not. And now, I wasn't there in the 08 and 09, when we were really good. I have not heard it that loud. But, and I thought it was special. The guys played to it. It was kind of, they tried to hype the crowd up. I love the fact that people were standing late in games that were really engaged in it. That's, I remember, the arena, the old Amway arena, really getting loud back in the 95 playoffs. But no, this playoff run was really right. I'll give you, my daughter, is kind of grown up with the Magic and everything, but she was too little to have gone when I played to a playoff game and everything. So she went this playoff series as an adult and never having been to a playoff game really, and was like, she was never heard that building any louder. She said it was totally different experience than just going to a regular Magic game. So that's pretty good firsthand experience knowledge for me. So
yeah, it was a lot of fun, and we'll leave you with this, Jeff. What does a Jeff Turner offseason look like? What are you going to be working on? What you're getting in the gym this year? What are you working on in the offseason?
Am I getting in the gym this year? Yeah, I am. Well, I'm spending a lot of time with my new grandson, and so that has been fun. I've been working on my golf game a little bit, so just trying to get a consistent, repeatable swing, much like, I think most shooters make good golfers because you're used to getting the repetition to get a consistent, repeatable movement every time. So that's my mindset right now. At 6'9", it's really hard. I got a big swing arc, so it's really hard to get a consistent, repeatable swing. But it's not impossible. I'm going to get there somewhere. So I'm doing that. I'll do a little traveling, and then I just like little projects. I'm not really what you would call a handyman, but I like to do things. So I'll get myself in a little trouble doing some things around the house.
Yeah, at 6'9", you've got a lot of room for error there in that swing.
Yes.
So I will be spending my fair share of time out there on the greens as well. I know you're a lot better than I am, but we're trying to get there, Jeff. Awesome.
That's right.
Well, Jeff, thanks so much. Like all season long, the last couple of years, you being so generous with your time. I know fans have really gotten a kick out of it, and always appreciate your insight. And let's do this again next year, but let's go a little bit further into the postseason.
I think we will, don't you? I mean,
I do.
Here's the thing, though, and Luke pointed out, we exceeded all expectations. What are those expectations going to look like next year? That's going to be interesting. We'll have a lot of fun talking about that.
We will. They'll be a little bit different. There'll be all the fun that we had this season. There will be a lot of fun, but a lot of that is going to be replaced by pressure and expectations. And I know our guys will be up to the challenge. So again, Jeff Turner, just thank you so much for taking the time. We really appreciate it, and we hope you have a great summer. We'll see you at Media Day.
All right, thanks, guys.
Always a pleasure talking to JT. Just always has such insight, and like it really isn't afraid to say what is on his mind. Shout out to Jeff Turner, to David Steele, Dante Marcatelli, Kendra Douglas, the entire Bally Sports Florida team, the Orlando Magic Radio Network, Brandon Kravitz, Jake Chapman, Terrence Ross, Jeff Turner made a postseason appearance on the Orlando Magic, radio audio network there. So just shout out to literally everybody that had anything to do with this season. Everybody, in the broadcast, the team employees, the coaching staff, the players, obviously our team here, but then also all Magic fans. Like, you all have just made this season so much fun. I know we're never going to remember it. But yeah, just once again, thanks to Jeff for taking the time and being generous with his time all season long.
Yeah, the GOAT, Jeff Turner, and shedding a little light on some Six Fan Show listeners, which was pretty sweet. That they mentioned that they at least saw the clip or listened to the episode. Who knows, of Jeff saying he wanted Miami in the postseason. So shout out to you guys, whoever you are, you know who you are. So shout out to y'all, and shout out to Jeff. Jeff is always gracious with his time, and he's not quick to get off the episode either, or the recording. He was stuck around and asked us questions about what the offseason is going to look like for us and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I mean, they're super down to earth, as is pretty much everybody in the organization, and look forward to him coming on the show again.
If you're watching on YouTube, you may have noticed I'm rocking my Kapaya shirt. I mean, with JT coming on, it was only right. And if you didn't get one of these, I talked to Jeff before we started recording. I'm pretty sure they're gone. So this is now going to be like a bit of a collector's item. But yeah, shout out to JT, just like a true gem, has just been so great to us always. Those guys don't have to come on the show, but we appreciate that we do that. And speaking of fans outside of Kia, shout out to the police officer that had a crosswalk duty after Game 6, because us walking out of Kia, we were walking the crosswalk back to go to Geico Garage, and we just said hello to the police officer, wished him a good night, and he goes, "Big fan," and we're like we turn around wait a minute, big fan of us or of the Magic? He's like, no, of you guys. We thought that was pretty cool. So shout out to you. And yeah, Luke, now we're going to take a few days off. We're going to come back again. The next episode was going to be May 20th. We've never done this, by the way, in my 5+ years of doing the show. We've never taken the week off. So it's going to be kind of weird. I'm somewhat dreading it, largely looking forward to it. But when we come back, obviously, I think we'll talk about sort of the season in a bit more detail, specifically, individual players, obviously talk about Jamal Mosley and the growth that he's made, and sort of our expectations going into next year. But as we come back, we'll also start to get into pre-draft stuff and, start looking at, who might be able to come on and talk to us a little bit about the draft, because to be honest with you, got no idea who's in it.
Not a clue.
I know that we're picking 18th, but it's been really nice. I don't even know when the draft lottery is. I know that's coming up in the next week or so here, but it's been awesome to not have to pay any attention to that kind of stuff. But we are going to jump into it and at least get a somewhat decent idea of who's in the draft and who may be a good fit for the Orlando Magic at 18. And I still think there's a big possibility that the Magic move that pick, Luke, because Jett Howard is essentially going to be a rookie next year. And let's be real, you don't really have room for 2 rookies on this roster, at least not any that are going to get playing time. So I wouldn't be mad at all. I actually would probably prefer that we move that pick in this draft. So keep an eye on that. And then obviously we'll have tons of guests this offseason. Obviously we're going to have Olympic coverage. We're going to have plenty of guys that are playing in the Olympics, from Goga to Joe Ingles, Franz and Mo Wagner. Hopefully Paolo Banchero, I'm still holding out hope that he'll get a late invite to Team USA if there's any guys that aren't able to go for the Olympics. So yeah, tons of offseason coverage. We're not going anywhere. I mean, Luke's eventually going somewhere. We already talked about it at the top of the show there. Sure. But yeah, Kevin and I don't exactly know what we're doing just yet. We're taking some time to just sit back and really think of everything. And then when we know, you all will know. But yeah, we're just gonna, enjoy the next several weeks that we have left with old Lukey boy here. But Luke, I think that is probably going to do it for this one.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, let's put a bow on it. For Luke Sylvia, this has been Jonathan Osborne. You all have been listening to the Sixth Man Show. And yeah, we're going to catch you next time in about a week and a half. See ya.
Thanks for listening to the Sixth Man Show. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and Spotify to get new episodes downloaded directly to your phone. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to give us a 5-star rating and a review. It helps out the show a lot. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Sixth Man Show. We'll catch you guys next time. Go Magic!